Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
Hello, a very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, the road to the 2013-2014 national budget. How can we deal with financial indiscipline, which is a key challenge affecting better service delivery? Ugandans continue to yearn for services in different sectors, even as government, which is expected to deliver on many of these services, insists that the available resource envelope cannot cover all the demands and expectations. Details emerging from the ongoing budget process in Parliament indicate that critical sectors like agriculture, health, education and infrastructure will not get the money needed to deliver as further laid out plans. Teachers and health workers are expecting some mild salary increments, but according to the Ministry of Public Service, the 320 billion shillings needed to fulfill the presidential pledge in this respect is not reflected in the budget framework paper. Some donors are cutting aid, with the latest report suggesting that the cuts may affect up to 93% of the entire aid portfolio. Donors are not happy about failure by government to deal with corruption. The World Bank estimates that each year Uganda loses over 500 billion shillings through corruption in procurement especially. Many economists stress that the situation calls for strict budget discipline to minimize wastage on top of tightening mechanisms to stop the theft of public funds. This, they say, will require the political class to stop undesirable demands such as more facilitation and spending more on consumption and administration, other cost of service delivery. So tonight we ask, what steps should we take to ensure that the funds allocated in the national budget deliver the desired targets? Our guests tonight, Honorable Bettie, Kamya, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance political party. You're most welcome, Honorable Kamya.
Thank you, Edmond, and good evening, listeners.
We're also joined by Mr. Morrison Rwakakamba, Executive Director at the Agency for Transformation. You're most welcome, Mr. Rwakakamba.
Thank you, Edmond.
And Ms. Hellenah Okiringi, Programs Manager at the Uganda Youth Network. You're most welcome, Hellenah.
Thank you, Edmond. Good evening, listeners.
Morrison, how is our budget expected to be funded with donors cutting aid?
For me, I do believe that as a country, we should plan indigenously, not exogenously. And for me, as a principle, really, this is my point of view, is that whether we have little resources, those little resources should help us serve the purpose of our development strategies. It's important to have one DNA, but having taken this, I think it is better, when you're spending and people are making noise and people are saying your priorities, that externalities, that absolutely also have interest with their own interest matched in terms of aid. So really, for me it's an opportunity for countries like Kenya almost funding their budgets 100%. A country like Uganda has the opportunity to really invest and finance its own expenditure. You don't go and plan and expect other people to finance your budget. It's like having a home. You want to eat chicken, but you expect your neighbor to buy for you that chicken. So for me, in terms of in terms of our budget, I think we should fully. So you ask the question, how? And I do believe that as a country, we have got immense resources that we can harness. If we break the loopholes that you have been talking about, the leakages in our financial system, in our expenditure, either through corruption, either through incompetence, then I think the resources we have would be really enough to finance our objectives. And I would give you an example, which is the sector I really like very much, which is agriculture sector. You realize that in 2008, we had spent over, I think, $10 billion US, $10 million US, not billion. on financing the NADs. I think it was about the $100 million.
Would be 100 million.
$110 million, I remember. And the Auditor General's report said that only 37% of that money was classified as useful expenditure. So meaning that, over 60+% was classified as non-useful expenditure. So
wasted.
So where did that over 60-something or 64, 63% go? There was another report, I think, around 2010, which showed that over 63% of all the money meant for agriculture sector was spent at the headquarters, air condition, big cars, and all that kind of stuff. So for me, really, there have been advances by many groups, youth groups, farmer groups, members of parliament, talking about this Maputo declaration that said our government should commit 10% of agriculture, 10% to the agriculture sector.
10% of their budget.
Yeah, but now, our government has been spending less than 4% for so many years. But for me, really, and the Agency for Transformation, argument has been, let's first know how to utilize the 3.1 or the less than 5%. If we cannot spend effectively the 3% or the 4%, why should we believe that if the government and parliament appropriated 10% for the agriculture sector, we would actually spend it efficiently? I am not saying government should not give the agriculture sector 10%, but we should first investigate, we should first find means and ways of spending the little money effectively, so that we can be trusted with bigger monies. And that's the same across the sector. That's what I think, Edmond.
Honorable Bettie, Kamya, the donors say they won't give us money for the new budget, apparently. $300 million was slashed in the last financial year, the outgoing financial year. It ends in June. What are we going to do this time?
First of all, I agree with Morrison to a large extent that we need to. We were very used to free money just coming in.
Freebie.
All there has to be is a donor conference. It's called the Paris.
Paris Donors Club.
Paris Donor Conference. Then say, I will put this, I will put this, I will put this, and then you have it, and then you misuse it, and they come here and they buy fuel guzzlers, and a lot of it goes also to expatriates who are working here with us. By the time the money is half of it anyway goes, and the donors know it, more than half the money that they give us goes back actually to them through conditional purchases, conditional procurement programs. You have to buy from this place and buy this and buy that, and you need an expatriate and he gets 10 times the money. You know, when I was working in UEC, I was
the Zwin
Entebbe. The technical advisor, the German technical advisor, it was also from a donor fund. The German technical advisor whom I replaced because his contract was finished was earning $10,000 per month. Only. Yes. That was more than the rest of us put together.
Really?
Yes. And when I replaced him, I did not get the $10,000, that we put together. That I think on top of that there was also free tickets for holidays and school fees for children.
Entertainment allowance.
So most of that money goes back anyway, somehow goes back. So we really need to, my only concern is that it should be planned by us, not punished. I think what we're discussing is we have not planned for how to fill that gap, which will be filled by the donor, which will be left or created
by the withdrawal of aid.
By the withdrawal of aid, how are we going to fill that gap? Now, Morrison is saying the things we should do, but he's not not saying the things we are doing, to fill that gap. The things we should do is a wish. It's like a wish list. I would do this. I will punish the thieves. I will do like the Ministry of Agriculture.
No, Betty, I'm not.
I think
I'm not in government.
I cannot. No, I mean we are, as Ugandans.
Okay.
As what we should do as Ugandans. But the tragedy is that we are being punished, and 30% of our budget, which we thought would come from the donors, is not going to come from the donors, not because we have found ways of filling that gap, but because we found ways of stealing that money, which is a terrible thing. So much as I agree that we should work to improve our budgets, our independence, it should be planned.
We should plan it.
And face ourselves as Uganda. It should not be visited us with wrath from the donors the way it is now. Because if you have a toothache and you just extract it,
there's going to be blood all over the place.
Blood
a lot of pain.
Yes, you need to plan for the extraction of the tooth and get
So because of our bad ways, stealing from the kitty, we're losing aid. Britain stopped giving aid to India recently, but they announced it in advance. It was in a good way. They say India is
you are planning. You have to, and we should be the ones saying, every year we shall need less.
We'll be winning ourselves.
And less. We'll be winning ourselves from this, but not first. And the attitude of government is not helpful. It's like, okay, so you're not giving us any more money? Too bad. We just have to live the way we are. I mean, there's no remorse. There's no remorse. Like, go after the people seriously, and, we should be seeing some serious remorse in management of corruption. It is not there.
Hellenah, give us perspective from your side, Uganda Youth Network. Do you think we're going to survive this aid cut?
First of all, I'll just pick up from what my colleagues in the studio said. I believe while independence of aid is extremely important.
Hellenah is dressed in black. You're part of the black man.
Very proudly, so yes, I am. So while it is good for a country to move towards independence from donors, like Honorable Bettie Kamya has said, it should be phased out. What we have experienced in Uganda is actually shock. It has been a response to the corruption scandals, the theft. It has not been planned, and so the ideal situation would be what Morris is talking about. You phase it out while you have a plan. You have a plan for how to close that gap. You've created a plan for proper expenditure, and even while you had the aid, you invested it in sectors that matter. The problem with us is where we put this money also.
Where do we put it?
It's gone into people's pockets, it's gone into bank accounts, it's gone everywhere.
But that's not planned, that's accidental. We've got a few bad actors.
No, I don't. This corruption in the country is so systemic and so organized, it can't be an accident.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very
Where
organized.
does it originate from? Tell us the fountain of all theft.
I believe because
Don't let her commit treason.
Well, if she knows who the thief is, let her tell us who the thief is. Maybe she knows the thief.
let me just make my point that countries, Rwanda has also been getting aid, but look at where Rwanda has invested the aid it has been getting. It has invested it in schools, it has invested it in roads. They have been responsible with how they have managed aid. So if the donors decide to pull out, they can be able to withstand that shock. Here we were under the illusion.
Just for a $400 million euro bond, they got over $1 billion, well, about $3.5 billion.
There you go. There you go.
They're marketable.
There you go. So if we
are bankable,
if you need to be bankable, really, for me that's the point. I would like us to go towards total aid independence, and it is possible and it is good, but it should not be as a result of shock. Because if you look at the sectors that are going to be hardest hit, it's not our president and his ministers who move around in fancy cars. It's going to be our hospitals, because aid goes into critical sectors like health. It's going to be our schools, because most of these schools are supported by grants. It's going to be the people who are benefiting from the trickle or the drops of NUSAP, rather of NADS funding that were going to the grassroots. So that for me is the issue. Responsible governments should manage aid, expect that there will be a phase out and plan for it. We were under some sort of illusion that it will always be there. Yeah.
So what's the cost gone going to be? Expand that a little bit for us, the cost of this aid cut.
I mean, while we're receiving aid, we were losing 16 mothers a day. So I don't know where it's going to soar to.
No, but there is a misnomer that I wish to correct. And this misnomer, our partners in development, we shouldn't expect that getting aid or service from them is an entitlement. It's really not. And I do really believe that it's their choice, if they want to offer help or not offer help. But I also do agree that when that help is squandered, then certainly that's a scandal, which should not happen. But listening from Hellenah, it creates this picture that our development partners are pulling out, which is not the case. They are pulling out support to, directly to public sector through budget support, what you call budget support. But you heard the other day the ambassador of the United States who said that they will keep the flow and even increase, but funds through USAID that is working with different agencies that are outside government, civil society. They will keep funding hospitals. They will keep doing, I don't want to call it self-accounting, but not funding directly through the budget support.
But
Norway has also said it. So money will still be coming to citizenry of Uganda.
Let's get the perspective.
But not necessarily within the rubric of the government.
Let's get the perspective.
Sure.
$300 million. There's no way they can pass that through the civil society. Not even 100 million. They don't have the absorption capacity.
And
the biggest NGO here that you have is probably has a budget of
you said is implementing these programs directly.
Well, you said it might be a rare case. It's not a local NGO. Hellenah.
But still, even if the funding strategy,
you have to understand that.
Morrison, even if the funding strategy was changed to support other partners, when donors are changing their strategy, it doesn't happen like that. It is very bureaucratic. It takes a lot of time, and for every day, that process is it takes a long time, and that time has a bearing on the citizen. It counts for the life of a mother who will not access drugs, because they are changing their strategy. I have worked with these guys. They'll tell you you'll get something next week. Next week is like 3 months.
But we have a word
it
from
has a bearing.
the U.S. ambassador who says they will not change their strategy. They will keep financing and putting money through their own programs, but not necessarily through the budget.
That's a little bit different, but the U.S. is not our biggest donor, I believe.
It has the biggest money in the country, talking about citizens. If it withdrew, if the U.S. withdrew its money here, you would see a problem.
It's substantial, but it's probably not 60%.
But it's the biggest in the country in terms of what goes to the citizens.
Yeah, but I mean,
groups like ACODA have been doing aid visualization. Doing the math. Perhaps you may need to check data with them. It shows that US, through USAID, puts the biggest money in the country, and I think Hellenah knows that.
Yeah, but even funding priorities differ.
It's basically in health and education.
It has.
But I think the point you are investigating here is how shall we fill that gap?
Yes.
Because if they increase money to this activity, it does not mean that that activity will flow into the government budget. The government had a budget of a shortfall of 300 million, which was supposed to do schools and hospitals and all these other things. So where are you going to get the gap, the funding to fill that gap? In the meantime, like Hellenah said, maybe someone is going to suffer. In fact, someone is already suffering because civil servants are not getting paid. The taxes are rising. They're increasing taxes. Someone is already suffering.
I can tell you that this action will help us to get back on the table and refine our practices. Government will have to tighten the belt.
But it's thanks to you. Thanks to you.
Corruption will have to be looked at much more closely because it hamstrings these services. I think it's a wake-up call to push us on the wall.
Let's see the healing to this process. What do we do? How do we deal with corruption? We know the facts. Billions in compensation and thefts, outright thefts here, outright thefts there. Public officials demanding bribes, slowing down service delivery. How do we kill that monster called corruption?
Hellenah said something very important. It seems it's very systematic.
Systemic, actually.
Systemic. It's not
It's inbuilt in the hardware.
It's not isolated. Instances of corruption are not really
An accident.
isolated incidents that you can deal with, you know. And like the Bible says, if you want to throw the first stone, you better be completely innocent. I think that's the problem, that no one can throw the stone. No one can.
If you quote the
stand up.
Bible, someone say Jesus said, and then the people who started going, it was the old men who left first. Go on, madam.
So really, the problem, I think the problem of corruption is almost beyond repair.
What do you mean?
With
You're being a pessimist.
Yes, with this administration, I think it's totally gone out of.
How do you want us to do about this administration?
We need to change many things. The system, the administration. In fact, I think what I've been fighting for all along, even over centralization of resources, is a push or helps this corruption, because there's all this money. If that money was not in the OPM's office,
right,
the Prime Minister would not have bought that billions of shillings car, because it would have not been there.
Only a few hundred
That
million.
money had gone to direct to northern Uganda, those people would not have found it here. If that money goes,
You mean you would have looked for it and failed to get it?
you not
Feeling all around, where is the money so I can get on my side?
but because of this centralized system, the money is overflowing. You look at it and it's overflowing. And only 17% of the budget goes back
To the district.
districts through local government. 17% of the budget. And of that 17% of the budget, almost 70% is conditional grants for, you know. So really when you
What's conditional grants?
salaries, what do you call it?
Allowance.
Salaries, allowances, utilities, that kind of.
So actual service delivery is about 30%.
So when you calculate it, what actually goes for service delivery
It's a tiny
is
percent.
about 4%. So but most of it is consumed at the center, and that's the problem with the system. So the system needs to be reviewed as well, so that the money goes directly to
the
people where it belongs, and then there will be less at each center for for.
I hope you are not suggesting that we democratize
Listen,
corruption.
this is Spectrum
There
Radio.
will be less.
We are going for a break. We'll be back. Just stay tuned.
Excuse me, what is this 300 shillings on my bill for?
That is for the tinted candles, madam.
And this 100 shillings?
That is for the air conditioning.
And this 200 shillings?
For the blue walls, ma'am.
I can't believe this!
Why pay for what you don't use or ask for? That's why we at Standard Chartered are introducing the Easy Go account, the first current account of its kind that gives you complete control of your banking charges. For more details, visit a Standard Chartered branch or call 0414 340077.
Would you like to leave me a tip, please?
Sunlight, it's freshness that stays with you all day. The fragrance that lasts.
Try the new range of Sunlight 2-in-1 washing powders for sensational cleaning and all-day fragrance.
So I'm chilling at home with my crew. The boys are waiting to watch the game on the telly, but the chicks want to go to the beach. So how do we play it? I glance across the room. Eye contact is made. A plan is hatched. Pete will get some sand. Lots of it. Jeff will take care of the deco, Tim the entertainment, and I the clubs. And so we bring the beach to the apartment. If we can't go to the beach, we bring the beach to us. It's just how we do.
It's not about where you're at. It's the difference you bring. Get a fresh take on things. Club is brewed longer for easier drinking. Brewed slower for great taste. Club, tastefully different. Not for sale to persons under the age of 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. The road to the 2013-2014 national budget. How can we deal with financial indiscipline, which is a key challenge affecting better performance? Our guests tonight, Honorable Bettie Kamya, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance Party, Mr. Morrison Rwakakamba, Executive Director at the Agency for Transformation, and Ms. Hellenah Okiringi, Programs Manager at the Uganda Youth Network. You two will be able to contribute to this discussion this very evening. Morrison, how do we deal with this corruption? End it once for all, we talk about other things.
No, this is really going to be a journey that involves very many aspects. Some are moral, some are spiritual, some are administrative, and some are political. Certainly, it's an all-round thing. But I've made some proposals before, and I will make this proposal again, which is we need to really liberate information about expenditure. We need to visualize it. I give you an example where when the Minister of Finance decided to publish all the schools that were receiving capitation grant some years back, it reduced corruption by over 60%, because one, head teachers will check their school's name in the newspapers, and then they will go to the district education office and say, we know money was spent. And because of that, capitation grant by over 80% is now reaching schools.
Publish what you pay.
Publish what you pay. So if money is released from Minister of Finance going to NADS, it should be published. If NAD sends money to districts, to the NADS coordinators,
should be in the
have 228 FM. Let the money.
The newspapers, it's easier to
newspapers. Then also we can also do with radios that can read in local languages, in Soro, in Rumasaba, to say this how much money in Rumasaba has reached to be at the sub-county. You people expect this. So because of that, there will be citizen inquiry, deliberate inquiry from citizens if services don't arrive. Citizens will go and demand. We know money to build a hospital in our district or in our village was released. It was spoken about on radio. My son read it in the newspaper. Where is this health center? So for me, balancing supply and demand is really going to be very important. And the role of ourselves, the Agency for Transformation, the Youth Network, the Uganda Federal Alliance, the government itself and all its branches would be to stimulate the citizen agency and make sure that we provide them the necessary information and they demand. Otherwise, if we keep people think that they will keep the basket of our money, and when the cameras or when we cannot zoom in there to know what was released, it's going to be very difficult.
How much of the stolen money would we save that way?
We can actually save over 90%.
You think so?
And then 10% can go into we can prosecute those who have run with that. But 90% of the money would be saved if we pursued that agenda deliberately. Because it worked in the Ministry of Education, especially for capitation grant, it can be replicated in other sectors.
And let's talk about, you can mention a little bit about that, how much it saves. But I would like you to talk to us about wastage. Even if we didn't steal anything, we have a lot of incompetent fellows around with courts in their offices hanging in the corner.
Just maybe on the issue of corruption, I think
I went to a public office today and I called this man and I said, I want to meet with you, and then he says I'm in the middle of a meeting. Then I walk out on the street and he says I'm coming in 10 minutes, and I meet him walking on the streets. He's actually not in the office. Are you sure? Not even a meeting. Yeah,
that's true.
And I embarrassed him. I told him we're going to have you fired because you don't do your work.
We need more citizens like you.
No, just this whole corruption thing. I've been taking time. I don't believe. I think we just need to get angry about the corruption in this country and just be determined to deal with it. On one hand, there seems to be this lax approach. Oh, let's do this. But we're like massaging the problem. And while all this conversation is going on, which is in no doubt one way to look at it, I am all for letting citizens know. I am trying to engage with that. And then I am watching TV and I see the president of this country giving the youth in Busoga a sack of money.
What's wrong with a sack of money? Money bags, whatever you want to call it.
I don't really want to go into that discussion because it is, first of all, it is completely disempowering for young people. If we on this side are trying to send a message and we are saying, okay, let people know where the money is going, and then we are looking at our screens and we are seeing somebody carrying a sack of money, we do not know. No, that's not accountability. That is patronage. We don't know where that money came from. We have no idea how these youth access this money. We don't know what they are going to spend it for. We have institutions, for goodness sake.
The man on the block is back carrying the bag.
It's not even healthy. But what message are you sending when a whole country sees a young person carrying a sack of money handed to him by the president. I mean, I feel it's completely disempowering. You would be a fool to sit and listen to a conversation that says there is political will to fight corruption.
That's not corruption, Helena. That's service delivery.
No,
bringing services closer to the people in a bag.
Morris was talking about decentralizing democracy. I think that's decentralized.
But how am I going to? That's sack business.
Let's talk about the sack a little bit. Then we talk about wastage.
Okay,
that's waste right there. That when you spend money that you have not planned for, a sector that was
this was pledged by the president.
From where? Out of which? Where was it drawn from?
Your legislator will
even if you plan, even if you have a presidential pledge at the district level,
those
pledges are planned for.
Morrison,
So
maybe you can explain these things better first.
No, it's just that I've not followed this conversation and keenly of the SAC very closely. But I know that State House, for instance, has a budget. The President makes pledges, there are usually requests, and I don't think, because what I had, really, I cannot really put my signature on it, but what I had from spokespeople, from the news articles, was that the SAC per se was symbolic to show that I have delivered on the promise which I made to you, to your group, to deliver on certain activities. The money is here, it is going back to the bank. And what we had is that that money was taken back to the bank, but the president, through again visualization, wanted to show I have delivered. But that's the story I had, and for me, I don't think it is disempowering in a way, because
giving money in bags. You should
no, because you see, the whole media crafted it to say, delivered money in bags. Yes,
so let the president get a sack.
But it sounds called symbolism. I mean, people can always coin things, stuff here and there, but there is always symbolism to say, I promised you resources to make sure that you invest in ABCD enterprises,
and the money is
the resources are here, so let nobody steal this money, actually follow it. You can't go back to the bank. If you have business proposals and plans, the money will be there for you.
You can touch, you can feel, you can
steal it.
So we are not serious about dealing with
corruption. The president said, let's move on. Whenever I say I deliver, you people say it's on the words, I tell you words, but I want to show you that now the money is with you here, it is in the bank.
It almost broke a man's back. Let's talk about something interesting. Let's talk about this laxity in the public service. There's a public service reform going on right now. How much can it change, and what advice would you give them?
Really, before we get onto that, I need to put in something with this, because
the bugs is
if you have not showing that you were asking for mechanism of monitoring, that's what's extremely important. For me, I don't mind if they get 250 million because he promised it to them and they are Ugandan youths, and okay, let them have it. But you must inquire whether they have the capacity, one, to receive it, two, to bank it, to keep it, who are the signatories, where are the resolution. Even in banks, they ask you where's the resolution of your members which says that this
can access that
be the
No, I think we are all
signatories of
talking
this
without
account.
information,
So
really.
what we saw, and it happens every day. It's not just this. When he goes to church, he goes with 50 million. It happens every day.
But that's in an envelope, a brown envelope.
Yes.
We're not talking about brown envelopes here, we're talking about bags.
So we are moving on to sex.
It's really bags.
Edmond, basically knows that the later is one of the most powerful groups in
And what I want to talk about also, before we leave this one,
Honorable Betty,
is Parliament. Members of Parliament taking the 5 million shillings without asking from which vote.
they trust the
From which
giver.
budget?
maybe.
I mean, their question, that is what, I don't mind if somehow they need the money to go and consult. But they must ask from which vote. But they're not even caring. They're just arguing, should we return it or should we not return it? Because even those who want to take it should first know which account it's coming from. But there's not even...
Would that be good manners?
It's not even a debate in Parliament which vote it came from and who appropriated it. 1.8 billion.
1.9.
1.9 billion.
That was
just
from the
goes like
parliamentary
that.
committee.
And the Parliament is not even asking which account is it coming from.
Might be
So,
just courteous
if
ask.
that is how it is working up there, who is going to be monitoring?
Up where? Show us a little bit about the competence, the quality of our civil service. There is a reform going on right now. What would you advise them to focus on?
Yeah, maybe to just punch in that the legislature is actually an independent independent institution, and I think it definitely makes some mistakes. But I think these resources should
But
have
if
been
it's
from
an
the-
independent, why should it be the
should
president
have
to
come
give them
from the
money?
parliamentary
No,
parliamentary
excuse me.
commission.
Why should the president be the one to tell them to go and do a consultation, and look for the money, and give them money? How independent is the legislature? Come on, Morrison.
The president can offer advice,
But
can
he's
offer
interfering with the
He
legislature.
can also offer guidance.
Can't.
A guidance is not a directive.
It was a directive.
And I think that's very important.
So people can say
Guidance with
they'll
guidance
still
and
share their desks and they go back to work the following day.
No, but you asked a very important.
He even wrote to the
Finance
and said, find
Let's
one
look at the
point.
quality of our
Find
civil
one
service.
point.
We had a reform some time back. Let's look at what we have now.
You know, I do agree that our civil service should have performance contracts. The Prime Minister, Amama Mbabazi,
Right Honorable.
Right Honorable Amama Mbabazi, my friend, he talked about it, performance contracts. I want to see that implemented, such that there are clear indicators, clear results. If you sit in an office, what are you supposed to have achieved at the end of the month, at the end of the year? If you're not performing, then you go. The other point I have made is our youth, our young people don't have jobs. They are productive sectors of the economy. We appropriate money every other year. We would want to see jobs report every other 6 months or quarterly. Let the Minister of Agriculture tell us we have created these millions of jobs from the money you give us. Let the Minister of Trade tell us. And if you are not performing on that, Edmond, for me, if you are the minister, if you are the permanent secretary, you should face the door and get out.
But in a graduate venture capital fund, that should be revolutionary.
I have talked about my issues with
Many degrees can go and make aircraft. One man try to do that.
You see, you don't have to create a venture fund in order to create jobs. You need anybody with agility, somebody who is entrepreneur. Even if that somebody is 90 years old but can create a business that can take on 40,000 youth, for me, I have no problem. So venture fund for me should be driven by agile ideas. If you have the best idea, not because you are young or not because you are old, you should access those resources.
But you know, Edmond.
Helena, let's hear from Helena.
But you see, we can't come here and demand certain things of our civil service, our dream civil service. We want a sector that creates jobs and everything. The thing is, have we invested in creating a civil service that is, that functions at that capacity? You're talking, for example, about a young person or somebody, an investor, be him 90, be him 40, who can create jobs. Have you given the people of Uganda an education that enables that kind of innovation? So all these things we are doing, please, I'm actually serious here.
We have to move from this episode of
the
book of Lamentations.
No. We're not going to talk about the Bible. If you want to demand something of public service of the citizenry, we must be in position to make the necessary investment to demand for certain output. If you're talking about, for example, wanting more jobs in agriculture, you said at the start of the show, we are now investing only 3.3% of our budget in agriculture. Where is the money going to come from to create those jobs? Yeah. So we cannot be here, be lax about corruption, and then expect certain things to happen. These things work together.
But the civil service, you're talking about the civil service. The civil service has been taken over by politicians.
What do you mean?
What happens is that the diplomatic service has been taken over by politicians.
Yes.
I was in that 8th parliament. Now, I walk on the streets of Kampala every day and I meet former fellow MPs. And you ask, Honorable, did you go back to parliament? No, I didn't go back to parliament, my dear. But Muzei helped me. Now I am the diplomat. Muzei helped me. Now I sit on the board of this. Muzei helped me. Now I'm a president.
Is it
the give of all?
No, it is not. Listen, Morris. I mean, we're not being. It is. That's my problem. That's my issue. The Constitution gives Muzei powers to appoint anybody. So what Muzei has done, he has appointed politicians in technocrat public jobs, and they have taken over the civil service. Politicians who owe, not because of merit, but who owe allegiance.
I think for me,
Muzei, they are the ones who have taken over. So you cannot say that you want an efficient civil service which is held by managing numbers.
How widespread is that? What about civil service of hundreds of
So
thousands?
what happens,
Tens of thousands.
Edmond, is that we have a civil service which has been taken over absolutely
Entirely?
by entirely.
You mean we have enough cadres in the civil service? The president has been complaining.
No, the leadership, all of them. And I can, if you want next month, I'll bring you a list. All the people who failed in the NRM primaries
Succeeded somewhere.
and the MP and the politicians, NRM politicians who did not make it to the national elections have all been absorbed.
In my father's house, there are many rooms.
So you cannot expect that there will be an efficient civil service.
Let's hear from the listeners.
Can I make a quick point on that?
Let's hear from the listeners. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can call in now. Our number is 0414-348-111, 031-226-0390, 031-226-1390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you're calling from. Morrison, you wanted to make a certain point.
Yeah, the point I wanted to make is that whether you're a politician, whether you're a religious leader, whether you're an engineer, doctor, or a preacher, for me the issue to be appointed, the key line is, are you competent?
The answer is
regardless of the color of your tie. Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name?
They are not.
Yes, Moses. Yes. I didn't pick that. Maybe he was talking about the rap and Penkonyan song. Spectrum, hello. Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir, your name? Bernard, yes? Please do, my brother. Please do, sir. Go on, sir. Yes, your name? Good evening, your name? Your name? Yes. Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name? Yes, Moses. Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir, your name? Yes, Martin.
On the issue of corruption, it appears as long as the corrupt are not funding the rebellion and are not funding their money in this land, government is getting paid as much as process in this land. Otherwise, why should the government waste time asking the corrupt whether they are corrupt? Instead of asking their property, who they are working hard, that is the claim to cross them from the property, not from the
Spectrum, hello. Yes, sir, your name?
Yeah, my name is Kizito.
Oscar Kika, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for this discussion now. I would like to find this one out. A lot of money, taxpayers' money has been invested in president, and none of them are wealthy. Unfortunately, they are not allowed to use because of the politicians or the politicians. What I pray for the ones who love them is that the politicians must be effective and allow the bureaucracy to operate mostly how people are playing and benefit. Just as they're not being around,
Alright, let's get final call and then come back to the studio. Spectrum, hello. Good evening, your name? Okay, go ahead. Morrison, give us a reaction. Of course, when you talk about 3.3% for agriculture, that's the money that goes directly to service and delivery, but there are other payments that are paid through roads, rural roads, water, and so on, irrigation, training schools. It's much more than 3%.
You see, the budget for agriculture, the argument of many people in government has been that if you put money into works and you're working on community access roads, certainly you are promoting, you're enabling agriculture people to move, things from products to the market and to move inputs to production areas. But there has to be specific money that goes into the nerve center of agriculture sector, like research, service and extension services that do reach farmers, and that's why we do believe that the percentage has to be increased. But the other issue which I mentioned, which I wish to repeat, is that let the 3% that we already have be effectively utilized, because there is evidence that less than 50% of that money is reaching the people. So I agree with the people who say that. But finally,
who does the supervision?
Yeah, supervision is for all of us, by the way. It's not only government. This is why Honorable Bettie Kamya said that if people have information and they know that government sent money for goats and these goats are not reaching, people can ask the questions. But I need to make one final point, Edmond, and that is on the question of Bernard. Who said there's so much we need to do, and I do believe that if we invest oil resources, oil money from oil into agriculture, we are going to leapfrog a lot of countries, because the problem remains also interest rates within agriculture sector. Dr. Suruma was here last week. Dr. Suruma the other week was at Hotel African, and he said, let's not send our oil money into offshore accounts. Let's have this money in our own banks, and then we make a directive whether within a laissez-faire economy to make sure that interest rates to our business people, to farmers, are low, so they can be able to borrow.
Honorable Kamya.
For me, I still like to think that, like Morris said, the problem is not as simple as the civil servants are incompetent. Take an example where the president appoints the Minister of Finance, appoints the Secretary to the Treasury, appoints the Commissioner General of URA, appoints the Governor of Central Bank. Who is going to stop him him taking liberties with the treasury. And that's not just in finance. Appoints officials of the Electoral Commission, appoints everybody, appoints the Inspector General of Police, appoints judges. Who is going to stop him taking liberties? And when liberties are taken at that level, for instance, the president say he wrote to the Minister of Finance to find money to give MPs. And the Minister of Finance could not say, but this money is supposed to be appropriated through Parliament. She just found the money. You know, and I'm not being personal. I'm saying that's how things work.
Or you're being a politician.
Because I'm not being personal. I'm just saying how things work.
Yeah.
So the system.
So what do you do? How do you crack that?
We need to reinvent the system so that we have a system.
What kind of system should
which
we have?
Separates the state from government. Government has a management contract of 5 years, which we give them to implement the manifesto.
The state stays.
It must be separated from the state because the state provides infrastructure to any government. But now the constitution has fused government and the state. You cannot differentiate between government and the state. The state must be non-partisan, permanent, and credible and technical. But now it's politicians of one political party, by the way, who have taken over the state infrastructure.
Let's hear from Hellenah.
Okay, I'll just make 1 or 2 points.
So someone said, don't call me on Mr. Money. What was he trying to tell us?
I just
go on anyhow.
The patronage, I guess. But for me, if our government has challenges, like Morris said, okay, fine, if they want to allocate just 3% and we have to prove how to use it. Another way they can empower our farmers is with policy that actually helps agriculture to thrive. I had a chance, I read a policy brief on the biotech and biosafety bill that is being tabled before the Parliamentary Committee on Science and Technology that permits literally unrestricted use of GMOs in Uganda. Okay, yes, organisms in Uganda.
Good point, Hellenah.
So how do you expect? First of all, there's no funding to our farmers. Okay, then you're giving them GMOs. GMOs you plant once. The cost of sustaining,
you plant a seed once, you can't replant what comes.
The cost of sustaining becomes so costly. We all know they are very expensive to sustain. Okay, so how are you helping your farmers?
Yes, and the man who manages the crops might say, I don't like Uganda anymore, and I won't give them seed. They can starve.
That's the wrong bill. It should be shot down.
Yes, so let Ugandan farmers, let's organize Ugandans. If we fail to get the budget allocation, let Ugandans rise up and fight this one the way they fought
our seeds to remain seeds. We don't want them killed by the GMOs. Thank you very much, Honorable Bettie, President of the Uganda Federal Alliance Party, Mr. Morrison Rwakakamba, Executive Director of the Agency for Transformation, and Miss Hellenah Okiringi, dressed in black, Programs Manager of the Uganda Youth Network, promoting Black Monday, among other things. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum, we'll be back tomorrow. Right now, you can hear the news in English.
Come out, wherever you are, from the rolling hills to the valley's end. Follow me, pretty girls, to where beauty is crowned. The